Question: how well do you know your own mind? Are you confident of your ability to sift through information and arrive at a balanced, fair decision every time and without fail? Can you throw off powerful influences and cut through the noise? Are you really the master of your own destiny? If your answer is yes, then I'm afraid science disagrees, as do the multi-billion-dollar global advertising and marketing industries, which rely on human persuadability for their daily crust, as well as politicians who nudge you into giving them your vote every 4 or 5 years. If I was to ask you to think of a tree, it would probably be quite hard for you to resist doing so. If I yawn, according to studies, the likelihood of you also yawning increases by a factor of 6. This latter phenomenon is a branch of what's called social mirroring, where people copy each other's gestures, speech intonation, and attitudes in a subconscious bid to build rapport. In other words, your personality changes subtly depending on who you are talking to, and in most cases, you don't even know it's happening. Persuadability factors. Being suggestible is a double-edged sword. On the plus side, it has a major role in people's social development, helping us to build connections with others and develop important emotional traits such as empathy. But it has also played a key role in some of humanity's worst atrocities, with entire communities and even populations persuaded in Borg-like collectivism to commit despicable acts against each other with no real justification. It's shocking just how easily the behaviour of intelligent and fair-minded people can be manipulated. Probably the most famous and stark demonstration of this was conducted by Yale psychologist Stanley Milgram in the early 1960s. Milgram was influenced by the horrors of the Holocaust and wanted to test the willingness of people to do bad things to others if instructed to do so by an authority figure. He recruited a cross-section of 40 men aged between 20 and 50, all with different occupations and levels of education, and paid them $4 each to take part in a fake investigation into the effect of pain on a subject's ability to learn. What they didn't know was that Milgram actually wanted to see just how much pain they were prepared to inflict. Would they refuse to administer pain, or be persuaded to hurt a fellow human for really no good reason? Prior to the experiment, each individual volunteer watched as an actor was strapped into what appeared to be an electric chair, then joined another actor, this one posing as the person conducting the study and wearing a lab coat, in an adjacent room. The volunteer was asked to take a seat at the electric chair's control board. The volunteer then asked a series of questions to test the memory of the person left strapped into the chair in the other room. If they got an answer wrong, the volunteer administered an electric shock, starting with an itchy 15 volts and increasing to a lethal 450 volts as the wrong answers mounted up. The actor in the other room would respond each time with increasingly agonized screams before falling silent by pre-agreement after the 300 volt level. If the volunteer wanted to stop at any point, he was given the same sequence of 4 verbal prods by the authority figure in the room, beginning with "please continue" and ending with "you have no other choice, you must go on." If, after hearing all 4 prods, the volunteer still wanted to stop the experiment, then it was terminated. The results were astounding. Every single volunteer administered at least 300 volts of fake electrical current to the person he thought was being tested on, easily enough to kill, while almost 2/3 of volunteers dished out the full 450 volts. Other studies have mirrored these shock findings, including the Stanford prison experiment, in which 24 randomly picked young men were divided equally and arbitrarily into prisoners and guards. They were installed in a mock prison where their behaviour could be monitored. The experiment was meant to last 2 weeks, but it was halted after just 6 days due to the shocking brutality of some of the guards. Then there was the 1968 school experiment, in which a teacher separated her students, who were all white, into 2 distinct groups according to their eye colour. The blue-eyed children were told that they had naturally superior intelligence and were given extra privileges, while the brown-eyed children had to sit at the back of the class. In no time, the blue-eyed children became arrogant and bossy. Conversely, their brown-eyed counterparts turned timid and subservient. The grades of the former group improved, while the latter groups suffered. The madness of crowds. The way we think is constantly being influenced by design, via anything from official public information campaigns to information wars fought across social media, but so suggestible are people that they can fall into weird patterns of behaviour all on their own. Folie à deux, known in English as the madness of crowds, refers to shared psychosis in which 2 or more closely associated people fall into the same delusionary thinking and behaviour. Again, there are many examples. Born in 1930, 4 sisters known as the Guinean quadruplets developed shared psychotic symptoms. They believed that they were being observed, controlled, and persecuted by various external forces. The sisters were diagnosed with shared schizophrenia and became an early test case in psychiatry. In Latvia, in the mid-19th century, a schoolteacher named Emily Sagi shared an unusual case of psychosis with her students. Sagi claimed to have a ghostly twin who appeared and mimicked her actions. The delusion spread among her class, with many children claiming to see Sagi's double as well. A more recent and highly perplexing case is that of Australia's Tromp family, a 50-something husband and wife plus their 3 20-something children who disappeared on an off-grid road trip in 2016. Leaving behind payment cards, mobile phones and identification, the family suddenly left their home and drove hundreds of miles north from the town of Sylvan to Bathurst before their son Mitchell left the group. The next day, the remaining family members carried on to the nearby Jennerling Caves before the 2 daughters, Rihanna and Ella, also split, stealing a car, driving to the city of Goulburn and reporting their parents missing. Rihanna then left her sister and was later discovered in a catatonic state in the back of a pickup truck. She was transferred to hospital for treatment in the psychiatric ward, while Ella returned home and was met by a presumably quite confused group of police. The cops had found the family's financial records left in piles as if they had all been searching for something, but what that was, no one knows. Not even the family. When Mitchell Tromp arrived home the next day, all 3 children were now accounted for, but the parents were still missing. It turns out that they had split up too, with the father Mark Tromp later accused of tailgating a young couple in his car, forcing them to pull over, then getting out and staring at them before disappearing on foot into a nearby park. Meanwhile, the mother, Jacoba, checked into a hospital where she was recognised by staff and the police called. Mark was found wandering randomly on a road days later. Mitchell and Ella subsequently appeared on TV, thanking the police for finding their dad, but they were unable to explain what had happened. The family had no history of mental illness and were not under the influence of drugs, nor were they in any financial trouble. Doctors concluded that the parents had been reinforcing each other's paranoia. And while theories abound that some kind of airborne toxin muddled the family's thinking, all Ella and Mitchell could come up with was that they had inexplicably feared for their lives. Other than that, the case remains a mystery. Fight for your mind. Mental illness aside, we are all persuadable for several reasons. Even rational people are not immune from the cognitive biases that lead to irrational judgments. We are programmed to make assumptions, the sort of mental shortcuts that cloud our ability to think objectively and critically. We are emotional beings, more likely to agree with and take cues from the people we like, eschewing the ideas of people we don't. Emotional reactions to stimulus can also lead to impulsive decisions based on short-term feelings over consideration of longer-term consequences. Persuasion techniques that appeal to emotions exploit these vulnerabilities, sometimes leading coherent individuals to act like complete nutters. History is littered with examples. People want to fit in, which also influences how we think. It takes a big personality to forego acceptance, approval, and social norms in order to plough on with ideas that could alienate us from the herd. And as we've seen, people tend to listen to authority figures, almost regardless of how their authority status has been conferred or won, and we follow instructions even when they contradict sound judgment. Even when it comes to deciding whether or not to electrocute someone. As any good marketer knows, persuasion techniques can tilt people into making desired decisions, even if the desire is yours and not theirs. Skilled manipulators can exploit people's trust, vulnerabilities, and/or wants to steer them down a particular path. The fight back, then, involves recognizing all of these influences and balancing them with a proper assessment of available information, particularly neutral and non-partisan data from whatever you deem a reliable source. Rationality is not a constant, and some people are more pliable than others, so it's perhaps more important than ever to develop critical thinking skills, awareness of cognitive biases, and to maintain healthy cynicism with regard to what you see and hear. In doing so, you'll be better protected against repeating some of the mistakes of the past, and letting nefarious influences blur the lines between right and wrong, truth and fiction, good and evil. That's all for now. If you enjoyed that little video, then do us a favour and like, subscribe and turn on notifications. I'm eternally in your debt. And stick around because there's lots more to watch, like reasons aerial firing is so nightmarish, and why a lost Da Vinci masterpiece might be just a centimetre from discovery. But most of all, until next time, thank you for watching. See you in the next one. The sisters were diagnosed with shared. The cops had found. When Mitchell Tromp.